Welcome into Seahawks Today by Chat Sports. I'm Megan Payton. We've got our mailbag show coming up in this video. But if you guys are not already part of the Chat Sports families, go ahead and subscribe today. Press that big red button or go to youtube.com/Seahawks TV. I'm not a huge superstitious person, but when it comes to football, I really am. So do not jinx it. If you want the Seahawks to win against the Washington football team, and we know they need one, go ahead and subscribe to our channel. You don't want to be sitting there tomorrow night going, man, if I would have subscribed, maybe they would have won. We are here to talk mailbag and answer all of your questions. And as you guys know, every week we do these mailbags. So if you are not aware, you go to the comments, you use hashtag Seahawks, you ask us anything you'd like. If you're subscribed, we'll consider answering your questions and you can be featured on our show. Today is our week 12 mailbag. So we're going to go over some of the things that you guys have been saying after what has been a disappointing season for Seattle so far. But let's get right on into it. Our first question is coming in from Yasher Alvarez. He says, will Russell Wilson be a Seahawk next year? So this is something that we already have brought up on the show, and it's probably going to be something that we continue to talk about as the year goes on. Where we stand right now, I'm going to say that Russ has a 50-50 shot of ending up in Seattle. Now, I know that doesn't give much clarity or really much of an answer, but that's because I genuinely don't know. I don't want to kind of lead you guys a wrong way, but I think it could go either way. Obviously, you think about what happened last year, all the trade rumors that came up during the offseason, him seeming like he just wasn't happy in Seattle, makes you think, all right, well, with an even worse record, I mean, last year they made the playoffs and he was unhappy. This year they're sitting at 3-7. So yeah, it makes sense that he would probably feel like he would want to be part of a different team. The new offensive line didn't really help much. Shane Waldron, yes, they brought him in, but it's not working out great. So I could see that happening, but also I could see Russ saying, hey, you know, these guys are on my side. I want to stay in Seattle. I want to win. So I am 50-50. This year hasn't gone, as great for him. Obviously, he missed a big majority of the season, a month or so, with that finger injury. But since he's returned, it's been a little difficult for him. We look at what he's done in 7 games. He's at a 64.9 completion percentage. He's had 1,564 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Now, I'm not saying that Russell Wilson has played bad, but I think that when we think of a guy like Russell Wilson, we think of him in the talks with, Aaron Rodgers, in the talks with Tom Brady, even, Drew Brees, what he was. So I think that we expect more out of him. I think that he's still recovering from the finger injury, if we're being honest, but I think that Russell will improve. I think he'll start to click again. It's just not happening yet. But these questions are obviously going to come up, and the worse the Seahawks do, the more likely, it is that this could happen. Russell could go somewhere else. But where we stand right now, do you guys think Russell Wilson will be in Seattle in 2022? Let's just get our early thoughts, and this is our pinned comment for today's show. So make sure you let us know what you're thinking. Type Y for yes if you think he's staying in Seattle, or type N for no if you think he's going somewhere else. Now, the next question also involves Russell Wilson, because Green Earth says, will DK Metcalf stick around if Russ leaves? Now, I'm going to give you my answer to this, but first we are going to jump to something completely positive. And if you guys have not already shopped for the holidays, I've got a great deal for you guys. They've got Black Friday sales going on right now, Cyber Monday tomorrow. You do not want to miss out on this. If you want to wear some great Seahawks gear. I don't care that they're not doing well. We are going to be fans that stick through this. So get some cool Seahawks gear. They've got hoodies up to 50% off right now. They've got some really cool women's stuff too. I've told you about this, the Erin Andrews line that I'm obsessed with. Her line is called Wear. These hoodies / like zip ups, they're going for a great deal. I have this exact same one in Saints. I'm just saying, but I am putting this Seahawks one on my Christmas list. So go to chatsports.com/Seahawks hoodie. Get yourself or get someone you love a great gift for the holiday season. Now, back to whether or not DK will leave if Russell Wilson leaves. Well, DK is on his rookie contract, so he's not going to leave, I don't think, next season. I mean, unless he's requesting a trade and something crazy were to happen, DK Metcalf is going to stay in Seattle for the 2020-2022 season. But there is the question of whether or not he will want to stay in Seattle long term. His rookie contract ends after the 2022 season. The Seahawks honestly should consider extending him after this season if they want to lock him down for a longer term period. I don't know if DK is going to want that. I think that, sure, Russell Wilson could have a little bit of an impact, obviously, on whether or not DK stays. I think that DK's young. I think that he's hungry. I do think that Seahawks, like, that is a good home for him. So I don't see that necessarily correlating together, but I do think it'd be smart of Seattle to lock him in early, get him signed after this season, because who knows, maybe then after 2022, he's leaving Seattle for other reasons, not having to do with Russ. I think it's important that the Seahawks get that done. And I do think that that depends on what change happens, because, this season's not going great. And so DK's thought process might have a lot to do with what ends up happening during this offseason, meaning apart from Russell Wilson, what are they doing with their offensive coordinator? What are they doing with Tyler Lockett? He's obviously hopefully going to be there probably for these next couple of years, but what are they doing at the running back situation? I think there's a lot of questions still at stake for DK, and it's going to, probably play into his decision making. And I don't think we're going to know the answer to those questions until after this season. Now we're going to stop from the questions for a second because the Seahawks do have a Monday night game that is tomorrow. If you are watching this on Sunday, they are taking on the Washington football team. I mean, it's obvious to say if the Seahawks want any chance at making the playoffs, they absolutely have to win. They essentially really need to win out in order to have a chance at claiming a wild card spot. But we're not going to sit here and talk about this game and what could happen, what couldn't happen. So I'm just going to straight up ask you guys, what will the score be? Go to the comments right now. Predict the score for this Seahawks-Washington game. This is the Seahawks' last prime game of the season. We know that Sunday night game got flexed, so this Monday night game tomorrow is their last one. So make sure you get your score predictions in for this Monday night matchup. Next question we have coming in. This one's a little bit longer, so stick with us. This is actually a Twitter question, by the way. So if you guys don't know this, you can ask these questions on YouTube, or you can just hit me up on Twitter, Megan Payton 7. Let me know what you want us to talk about. That's what another fat guy did. He said, "What's going on, Downey?" or at Megan Payton, "For future Seahawks video, which unrestricted free agents should we resign and for how much?" He goes on to list Brandon Shell, DJ Reed, Disley, Everett, Collins, and Diggs. So we're going to touch on some of these. Now, when we get into how much, that's a little bit harder, and I think that's a video for another time. But I am going to say that the Seahawks need to keep Diggs, and they need to keep Alex Collins. Now, the price, it does matter. So I'm not saying, hey, the Seahawks should just get whoever they want. I think after the math of it, they're going to be left with about $32 million. I was reading that $32 million in cap space. Now this we'll talk about later, but who should they bring back? I think Quandre Diggs is a must, and I know he's going to be expensive, but he's proven how much he's worth it. He's had 3 interceptions this year, 5 pass breakups, 62 tackles, and he's probably been, I'd say, the most dominant person on this Seahawks defense. Then we flip over to the offensive side of things and we look at what Alex Collins has done for the Seattle team. And now I know that he was kind of playing, that running back 2 role, but Chris Carson being out for the season, he's had to step up. And I'd say he's done a pretty good job. 94 carries, 381 yards, an average of 4.1 and 2 touchdowns. These are 2 guys that I think the Seahawks need to figure out re-signing. Like I said, Quandre Diggs is going to be a little bit more expensive, but I think he is well worth it. Now we move on to some of the other guys like Brandon Shell. Now, I'm not going to sit here and talk bad about Brandon Shell. He had a bad game last week, but he's not a bad tackle. I don't think it's necessary for the Seahawks to re-sign him. I wouldn't put him in they must. I think that they could live without him, find someone else. It's obviously been a struggle no matter what for this line. So Brandon Shell has played okay, but not great, nothing noteworthy. I'd say I would be okay with the Seahawks moving on from Brandon Shell. Now we talk about tight ends. Gerald Everett. I love Gerald Everett. And to be completely honest, I don't think the Seahawks are using him enough. He should be getting way more reps and he should be targeted more. That's just my opinion. And I think absolutely they should re-sign him. I would say he deserves a place more than Will Dissly. I'd say that, obviously we haven't seen as much out of Dissly because Everett has taken on that kind of main tight end role, but I'm picking Everett over Dissly as far as tight end goes. Now we look over to the cornerback room, which has been a major problem for Seattle. They started kind of figuring it out with Trey Brown. Then he got hurt out for the year at least, and maybe even a little bit of next season. DJ Reed has stepped up. I like DJ Reed. I would want Seattle to, keep him on the roster. Now, I would say I'm not opposed to, I'd actually like the Seahawks to maybe draft a new corner or, sign a guy that has a little bit more experience, a little bit more consistency. I do like DJ Reed, though. I wouldn't say he's necessary. I'd actually like the Seahawks to stick with, Trey Brown. Hopefully he gets healthier and then we can see more of him later on. But these are just my, kind of initial thoughts to this free agent question. But it's a good question because, as the Seahawks season kind of doesn't turn out to exactly like we'd like it to, there's going to be changes that happen and a lot of question marks regarding some of these unrestricted free agents, especially what their opinion is, what they're going to want to do if other teams want to sign them. So we're going to have to keep you guys updated on that. But I will ask you right now, it's your turn. Which free agent do you want the Seahawks to resign? Go to the comments right now and let me know from this list, who do you think is necessary for the Seahawks to sign? All right, our last question coming in from Batman Fan 20 Batman. I love this username. It's still my favorite. He says, Geno Atkins is still out there as a free agent. He is still a good defensive lineman. Now, I still like this idea. We've talked about Geno Atkins a few different times during the season, kind of before the season. I still think the Seahawks could benefit from a guy like Geno Atkins. Now, obviously, he's older. Obviously, he hasn't played in this 2021 season. He's been a free agent, like we said, hasn't played all year. The Seahawks worked him out in August. They didn't sign him then, but also that was in August. That was before they knew where they'd be at heading into week 12. So I'd say maybe now is the time. Now, obviously hoping that he's healthy. He was cleared from his shoulder injury that he suffered back in 2020. I don't know if the Seahawks saw something when they worked him out that made them think, hey, he's not healthy. But if Geno Atkins is out there and he's healthy, I'd say why not? At this point, Seattle should be considering all options. And I think Geno Atkins should definitely be there as a top option for this current season if they want to turn it around. But we're going to have recaps for this big Monday Night Football game, Washington football team versus the Seattle Seahawks, last primetime game for Seattle. So make sure you have your notifications on, you are subscribed to Seahawks Today, because we will be keeping you updated through all of it with the Seattle Seahawks during the season.